This is a review of the molecules that provide energy to photosynthesis. These molecules are created in the light-dependent reactions and they are used in the light-independent reactions. Above is our overall equation for photosynthesis, which we won't talk about in this review. Instead, we're going to talk about the molecules that provide the energy necessary for glucose to be made. These are very important to remember how they're structured and how they work. So our first molecule is ATP. This is our biological energy. This is a very useful form of energy. There's all sorts of other types of energy. There's energy from the sun. There's energy from the movement of water running downhill. There's all kinds of energy, wind energy, but none of those are very useful for us as humans to do things with, or in our bodies to do things with. But a very useful sort of energy for us in our own households will be electricity. We can think of ATP as our body's version of this, a type of energy that's very useful to do all sorts of things. And when it is ATP, it is energized. And ATP stands for adenosine triphosphate. If you don't remember that for the test, that's okay. But remember that there's a large A molecule, that's adenosine, with 3 phosphates connected to it. And in each of the connections between the adenosine and the phosphate, there's a bond, and this bond contains a lot of energy. And that is where this energy, this energized ATP, is going to get its energy from the bond between one of those phosphates and the adenosine. So whenever the cell needs to use some energy for moving things in and out of the cell membrane to make new DNA, or in our case here to make glucose, then the ATP molecule is going to move over to the area where it needs it, and it is going to release one of those phosphates. And when it does so, it releases energy from that bond, noted by the yellow star there. There's more energy getting released, and the bond dissolves. And that energy has been now applied to the Calvin cycle or wherever in the cell it needs to use it, and the phosphate has been released. Now it is no longer adenosine triphosphate. Instead, there are only 2 phosphates connected to the adenosine, and so it is adenosine diphosphate, ADP. So you need to remember ADP has 2 phosphates, ATP has 3 phosphates. ADP has been de-energized. But this ADP molecule can then go back to photosystem 2 in photosynthesis and get reconnected with its phosphate, and it can be recycled. So here it is, can be recycled and re-energized back to ATP. Our second molecule that's going to carry energy, is going to be used to provide the energy to the Calvin cycle, is called NADPH. NADPH is, as a molecule, does not contain energy per se, but we can think of it more as a transportation vehicle. In class we called it a UPS truck. And this NADPH is going to be carrying energy to wherever it needs it. And in this case, again, the Calvin cycle. And it's going to be carrying energy in the form of electrons. So here's our UPS truck driving on. There it is, and its cargo are 2 energized electrons. They are so energized, there they are, bouncing up and down, lots of energy. Then it is going to drive it to wherever it needs to go. In this case, again, the Calvin cycle is going to use those 2 energized electrons, and it jumps them off and it becomes NADP. No, it does not have the H anymore, because once those negatively charged electrons are gone, then the positively charged hydrogen falls away as well. So now there's our empty UPS truck. And once it drops off those 2 electrons, it's empty. It can drive it back to the thylakoid, back to photosystem 1, where it can pick up more energized electrons and make the trip again. So it continues to repeat again and again. These 2 molecules, again, are very important in providing the energy necessary for the Calvin cycle to make glucose. And remember, they are both made in the light-dependent reactions. ATP is made by photosystem 2, the first one. And NADPH, with its energized electrons, is created by photosystem 1. Come see me if you have any more questions. Stay classy, TKA.